Shut up and sit down.
Welcome to the Answer is Yes podcast, where we will explore the cause and effect of just saying yes in your everyday life or in business. I will dig into topics that are not just stimulating, but will challenge you to be better in everything you do. The podcast is based on the simplicity of saying yes to opportunities you might encounter every single day. I'm your host, Jim Riley. Join me in my first series titled Blue Collar Redefined. Well, here we are in another week of the Answer is Yes podcast, and I got to admit, I'm sitting here in the studio drinking a glass of Monte Chinique, one of the wines we feature over at BajaUnitedWines.com, and enjoying, I suppose we're in the last weeks of the summer as the kids start to go back to school. I know mine are going back. I'm sure yours are. If you've got them, everything's changing to fall already. So I appreciate, I guess, the change of the season and getting over this really hot summer. So as you've probably been following along, my Spartan racing, another thing that I'm counting down to be, I'm ready to be done now. I've talked about it for the last couple of months in terms of our training and running about 70 miles a week. We trained at Mount Whitney this last weekend, and if you follow me on my Instagram accounts, Jim Riley Racing are at Spartan Strong at 50. You'll see I left some great photos and some videos of the Mount Whitney climb. I was up there with my trainer and some other people from the gym, including my wife and one of her good friends and one of our friends, Wayne. And man, I forgot how hard that mountain was. So the goal was to get up and down, see how long it'd take us, my trainer and I. So it took me 7 hours and 40 minutes round trip, which I think it's obviously not a record, but it's a pretty fast time. They say just getting up to the top in 5 hours is fast. So we were up and down in 7.5. And then I turned around and went back up another 4 miles to catch the rest of my group and get some more miles in. So I managed to get 30 miles into Mount Whitney this weekend. And like I said, I'm just about done doing all this training for the Spartan race, the Ultra Beast in Lake Tahoe coming up. But, you know, I got to admit, I feel great. I feel healthy. I'm strong. And, you know, it's tough to maintain this level of training. And people a lot of times will ask me about where my drive comes from or how am I driven to go after certain things. And I think what makes it easier for me is to look at the end goal. And in this case, it's something that I wanted to achieve at the beginning of the year, and that was doing a Spartan Ultra Beast, which is 30 miles. And I've had my eye on it all year. So when it comes to these tough weekends of training and long, arduous hours, it's really about maintaining the vision of what I saw at the beginning of the year, and that was the achievement of doing something spectacular and hard. And I think that that's what gives me the drive, is always looking at the end game and the results of that end game. Now, in this case, the results of running a Spartan Ultra, I'm not really sure what they're going to be. Probably going to be very sore, but oftentimes it's about the experience along the way. And I've had some great training days with friends and family, and I've learned a lot about myself in terms of my own personal commitment and ability to do something at that level. So I am proud to say that as this thing wraps up, that I feel good about what I've done. So on another note, in regards to podcasting and my guests, I just feel, as I've mentioned before, we continue to get great guests on the show and elevate the experience for our listeners. And oftentimes I'll talk about how I believe that I'm getting some tremendous amount of value in doing this. I walk away from these interviews and I'm just blown away by somebody's career and the successes that they've had. And each week, like I said, just keeps getting better and better and better. The Baja sessions are going well. We had Cameron Still on this week. I love sitting down with him and learning about the Baja headquarters. And although the focus is Baja, because Cameron is Mr. Baja in my mind, I love that he's created a business and he said yes to something, and that's kind of a culmination of his past and bringing it all together in the Baja headquarters and what they're able to do down there in San Juan Capistrano. So, by the way, if you need car parts, truck parts, lifts, advice, what have you, Baja headquarters is your spot. They're new, they're open, and Cameron's just a great guy. So with all that being said, I am thrilled to introduce our new guest for this week. I've had Lyndon Faulkner on the show today, and his name is synonymous with Pelican, but as well as some other significant achievements in his life. And I'm really proud to have this interview for everybody because I think there's a lot to be learned here. We talk about sports and the strength that gives you to move through your career and do spectacular things, as well as just making great decisions and being in the middle of some major achievements, really just in technology and where we are in the state of affairs. So please enjoy this interview. If you like it, share it with friends and family, and let's go straight into it. Hello and welcome to the Answers Yes podcast. I am here in Torrance, California. I've enjoyed my drive up here down memory lane, and I am with Lyndon Faulkner of Pelican, and just thrilled to be here. How are you today, sir?
Yeah, all good. Good morning.
Yeah, I just walking into the offices, looking at the product on the walls and some of your history here. It really is an iconic brand, in my opinion, and as I think you mentioned, very authentic.
Yeah, really authentic brand, and I think that comes out of, the products that we produce.
Yeah, well, I want to hear all about what you're doing here, but I've been interested in your background since the day I was introduced to you via email, through a publicist, into another company, into a third company, and here I am sitting in your office. But I'd like to hear a little bit about your early years because, as you know, the show is called The Answer is Yes, and I think that everything you've said yes to in your life leading up to this point has gotten you to the leadership role here. Maybe we can start with, some college days, some football days, some of the things that you were really proud that you were part of in the younger years.
Yeah, I think, there's a lot of things that shape people, and certainly for me, my youth taught me early values. For me, interesting, and I'm not your, Harvard-educated kid that's come into a CE role at Pelican all these years later, and I started off from a working-class family in a pretty tough town, which but great parents, great family, so very big family values.
Yeah,
and not a lot of money, but as a lot of people can attest to, not money makes everything. So there was, great camaraderie around the kids on the estate. And
yeah, so just for our listeners that aren't familiar with your background, because they're going to pick up on your accent, right?
Yes.
Where are you from, and what was that like where you grew up at?
So, lots of everything where I grew up. So not a lot of money to start with. So working class parents, mum worked, dad worked. We all worked as soon as we could. 16, 17, you all got jobs that allowed you to go and do nice things as best you could. But certainly not an affluent area, but lots of kids around, all hanging out together. So, peer pressure and really sort of grew up in a really good environment, actually, as the fact that it didn't have any money didn't mean it wasn't a good environment to grow up.
Yeah, sure. Now, I know when I was a kid and I was working, like you talk about at an early age, my dad had me putting up fences and doing some yard work and roofing new houses and things like that. What types of activities were you up to?
Yeah, helping out on construction sites, newspaper rounds as a young kid, anything to get money in, just to have your pocket money.
Yeah. What country was this?
In Wales.
In Wales.
Yeah.
Okay.
In the UK.
That's where we're getting the accent from.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what's interesting is the amount of CEOs or leaders that I've interviewed that had a paper route or some type of jobs at an early age, and how that's influenced their lives. Do you think there was an importance for you in doing that?
The importance for me, I think, that come out of everything, as you say, as your environment shapes you and your family shapes you. It was really creating a work ethic in me. So, it wasn't the highly educated guy that moves on to run some super company. It was a really embedded work ethic that was really pushed at you at a young age. And my whole family had it. A lot of my friends had it. And, you look to go and work hard. And that's the way you were brought up. And that's the way you were, built self-respect.
Yeah. Do you think that as a society in general right now that we've lost some of those values of working hard? And I don't want to say in our youth because I don't want to blame our youth, but sometimes I feel like we've lost a little bit about that.
That's such a tough one, I think, because, psychologically now everybody has more. You know, and I think, and certainly looking at my kids and working with my kids, keeping that drive going today is, I think, much tougher than when I was a kid. You know, there's a definitely, everybody's got more, everybody gets more. There's certainly a sense of entitlement, I think, today amongst kids, you know, wherever they are, than there was when I was young. You know, so it's a tough, it's a tough environment. But I think at the same time, you know, we are in an environment of more opportunity as well. There's a great amount of opportunity there for people to go and chase their dreams and hopefully be successful.
Yeah. Speaking of chasing some dreams, you talked about your youth at home. What was your first jump into the real world of whether that's a career job or college, or where did you go from the house?
So I did a good old-fashioned apprenticeship. So I was fortunate at that time to go and do get an education in electrical engineering, and was paid to do that. So I worked for a company that both sent me to college, and then I worked on the job when I was not in college and actually got paid for that. So it was a 4-year program, and that left me with a very well qualified job and you know, a good paying job.
Yeah. I love that you said you went off to do an apprenticeship, because a lot of times we talk to people on the show that have made a decision to go into a trade and learn a trade, and I think that there's a shortage of that, and I really would love to see more people consider those types of opportunities these days. I think there's a tremendous amount of value in that. Yeah,
when I grew up, there was a lot of industries that supported the area. You know, aluminum, steel, coal was the staple diet for people's jobs. And it was quite normal for you at 16, 17, 18 to go and work in those environments. They were quite well paid.
Yeah.
You know, again, I think really influenced by my father, there was a big push for me to go and get qualified and learn a trade, which is interesting because really I wasn't that bothered about going there. All I wanted to do was play sports at the time.
Yeah.
You know, so it was a big stretch for me to sort of not, you know, to balance my efforts of playing sports with taking on this job and going to college.
Yeah, you brought up sports. Let's talk about a little bit of your sporting career. What did that entail, and what roles did you play in that world?
Yeah, so I played rugby, which in Wales is the national sport, very much like, you know, baseball and football is here. Certainly that was the national sport. Tough game.
Yeah.
Especially to play at a high level. I was very fortunate to play at a high level at a very young age. And actually, you know, everybody just thought that was going to be it. That's all you had to do was play sports, and it sent you around the world, which it did. All paid for, and you played around the world and had a lot of notoriety, certainly in Wales, from playing. But it was my father who insisted that I got qualifications, which funny enough turned out to be very relevant, because I got injured at 24 in a bad way, which finished my rugby career. And then I had to rely on my qualifications. So that was a natural benefit for me, was to be able to go back and go into the job world with a qualification.
Playing a sport like that in your country, like you said, that is the sport, like baseball is over here. Was there a lot of pressure, obviously, for you to excel and be good at what you did? You said you talked about going around the world. And the reason why I asked this, because, you know, in doing my research on you and looking online about your history, one of the things that really resonated with me personally was the statement about your athletic determination to succeed. And really what we're talking about is where you garnered some of that determination from is when you were playing sports. And I'm just a little bit more insight about what it was like to play sports and how you developed that determination to carry on throughout your life.
I think from that, I'm a product of the environment. You know what I mean? I think so you could have played local sports and played with all your friends, and you know, that would have been fine. You would have played the sport. For me, I was sort of really thrust into coming out of high school into this very high level, high end group of teams that I played for, where discipline around playing the sport well at a very high level had all sorts of connotations.